Welcome everybody to another episode of Think Preparedness. We have brought together some of the most interesting minds in survival preparedness to discuss, of course, the things that matter to us as we endure what is happening in the world around us. But to be serious, we have Chris over from City Prepping, Nate, which is the Canadian prepper, and Cliff, the urban prepper. And I want to talk to you guys today about Russia and Ukraine. It's on everybody's mind, out of everybody's mouth. There's a lot of people who are saying it's going to be a false flag. There's people who are saying it's just a mockery that Putin's going to basically own the West by drawing up 150,000 people on the border. But what I'm seeing from people both in Russia and on the Ukrainian side is footage, videos, and images of shellings that are taking place between pro-government and anti-government forces today. I'm sure that you guys have seen by now the shellings that took place at the kindergarten. And what I think that we're really at the point of now is an escalation of violence that could theoretically lead us to world war. I'd really like to get to know your guys' thoughts on that. And for anybody watching, I'd love to hear the comments on what they have to say of what they think is going to happen. But I think it has the potential to really send us over the edge. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I haven't been following it admittedly as close as I'd like to. I've been so busy the last couple of months, but I've been, watching it close enough to understand that. I don't know. My take at the moment is a couple of things. One, it's pretty clear, Putin is trying to draw the situation in. I know it's been interesting watching a lot of misinformation campaigns come out on this situation, but all that to say, clearly America's at a point where I think we're tired of dealing with war, and I think he's capitalizing on that opportunity. And so for me, I think what I've been trying to focus on personally with myself and my channel is to focus on, kind of battening down the hatches, getting prepared as much as possible. I tend to look at these situations from a pragmatic perspective, and that's what I'm trying to encourage my audience to do, is to realize what's probably going to come next, and hopefully nothing, in the sense that hopefully there's going to be no major conflict that we're all drawn into, the best case scenario. But all that to say, it will impact us at the end of the day, whether that's increase in fuel costs, wheat, other commodities. And I just would encourage people at the time that we're in, already experiencing inflation, not like we are, just to continue to prepare as much as possible. And that's really my take home message.
What about you, Nate?
Let's hear from Cliff first, because I might take a minute.
Okay.
All right. I'll just go really quick. I don't know if
take your time.
Yeah, locally at least, it's kind of two worlds. Like there's like the whole preparedness, like what I see on YouTube, what I see on Twitter, what I see online. I'm hearing a lot of it, but then when I go out and locally or go to work or in the evening, like no one's talking about it. So I feel like I'm living almost in two realities, where one of the realities is where I think it is, like what's Brad described, and I'm super worried about the different things, and I'm trying to take action, but I don't want to create a kind of the panic that we saw in 2020 with a lot of people hoarding and buying stuff. But then when I go out to the grocery store, I don't get that sense of urgency. I don't get the sense of even anything going on. So if I wasn't on YouTube and on Twitter for 3 months, I was just going out in my regular life, I would have no idea that stuff was going on. So it's, I'm feeling like when I'm out in public, that I know something that other people don't know. And I hope that it doesn't end up being any kind of world war. That would be lame, but I'm hoping it's just just a big F you, no F you type thing. And then break apart. But it's definitely concerning for me. I've definitely, like a lot of the preparedness community has been doing, we've been talking about topping off our preps, topping off our pantry, making sure that our gas tank's always full, because who knows when anything's going to happen. But it's just a little awkward feeling that everyone else, like the real people that I see in real life, that they're not doing that. They're not even thinking about that. They're not talking about it. Friends and family aren't talking about it. Coworkers aren't talking about it. Random people that you meet. It's just, at least again, I'm in the Seattle area, so maybe they're just in their bubble, but it's just kind of a weird sense. It's different than what it was previously, like in 2020 when things all started.
I think that's a little bit of survivor bias, in that, if we don't go every day talking or looking at car accident statistics, even though we know that those things happen. And it's not until that affects you that everyone really says, oh my gosh, look at what can happen in a car accident. Yep. And I think that when you say you look online and you look on YouTube and you see these things, and they make you kind of like reinforce your decision in preparedness, or maybe get a little bit extra, I think that that's because we internalize that it might have an effect on us. And so we get rid of that survivor's bias, and we say, okay, I know this could happen. And so I'm going to prepare for it to the best of my ability. But I'm seeing much of the same thing. And it is kind of like living in a dystopian world. And I think that, I was reading some studies and talking with people, and there's so many people right now who, and if you can go and do the search yourself and find people who don't know what is real, and they are legitimately asking in the public forum, what is real anymore? Like, can I believe this? Can I do this? Who should I trust? And basically questioning reality as a whole. So I'd hate to see what comes next.
And it's really made me appreciate that. I mean, I don't trust what I see on TV, that's for sure. I don't trust like a lot of the mainstream, any of the 3-letter places. Sure. But I do trust the people that have been sending the message, like everyone in this room. I trust the individual. I don't trust the corporation. And but I think a lot of people, there's a lot of zombies out there that do trust what they're being fed. So
yeah.
Nate, give it to us.
Yeah.
Well, no, I like what you said, Cliff, because we can get into this tunnel vision, right, on the internet nowadays. And I've noticed that with some people, especially with the convoy situation going on here right now. There's some people who are so taken in by it, but if they just turned off the TV, they wouldn't even know anything was going on, other than that the prices of everything are going up.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying, because you can get into this mindset where all you're seeing, and you think it's kind of like a bit of a confirmation bias, I suppose, where you think that the entire world is worried about this stuff, when really it's just you, because you're hyper focused on it and the algorithm is feeding you more of what you want. So yeah, you have to, as a prepper, we have to make sure that we're not getting too lost going down that vortex of information. What is that? I'm sure there's some expression, but you're chasing something that's it's a global issue, whereas you're not focusing on what's going on locally. So yeah, I agree that it's one of those things where it could have some huge implications, but there's also a problem with, it's a very complicated issue, as I've come to find over the last few weeks. I mean, if you just turn on the news, Putin bad, NATO good.
Sure, yeah, right.
To invade, and that's all you see. But then you realize there's this whole historical backstory to the whole thing. There's 2 different factions within the Ukraine fighting. Some of the ones that we're supporting, in fact, are almost antithetical from an ideological standpoint, and we would have actually probably fought in previous world wars. So I'm talking about hardcore fascists, okay?
Yeah, right.
And I'm not saying that all Ukrainians are like that by a long shot. I'm saying there's different groups, but they have a fairly strong presence. So it's not as simple as just taking what the 3-letter corporations are saying as a fact. It's much more complicated than that. And I've been getting information from a variety of different people around the world, some of it credible, some of it a little on the fringe, but a lot of it has been quite credible. And I'm surprised that people in these positions that are very close to what's going on are willing to send me messages. And I'm very grateful for that, because I've been this magnet for information lately. And the more I do these videos disavowing what I've been told, essentially, which is not classified information, it's just it's qualitative information from people who are on the ground. So the last 2 weeks or so, I've been putting out a lot of this information, and a lot of people seem to be interested. And it's because it's not me just speculating. It's actual people who are on the ground, doing stuff. And I've been communicating back and forth with a pilot who has been transporting stuff to the Ukraine. And by stuff, I mean, weapons. Okay. So he's one of the pilots who's flying the Javelin missiles and all this military hardware over there. And so he's giving me firsthand accounts of what's actually going on the ground. And, you start to realize that we forget that there's so many intelligence agencies, and like I say, that historical context, it's a game of spy versus spy. And we the peasantry, we're not really supposed to know what's going on. We're just supposed to look at it dialectically and say one side good, one side bad, but it's far more complex. The best intel that I've had so far, if I could summarize, would say that the risk of world war as a result of this is actually fairly low. However, right now, unless somebody does something stupid in the process, but there very likely will be some sort of civil war within the Ukraine in which NATO is feeding one side and the Russians are feeding another side. And it all boils down to Russia not wanting anti-ballistic missiles in the Ukraine. And that's what the concern is. The concern is that, well, maybe not now, but maybe 5 or 10 years from now, that would be a reality. And then that, of course, would threaten Russia's national security. So some people would say, well, that's the Russian view. Okay, that's the Russian propaganda view. But I'm sure I'm not saying like the Russians are great. And when I say Russians, I mean the Russian leadership, not the Russian people. Some people would say that's all propaganda. But for me, the way I've been seeing this, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Like people are saying, oh, see, the US government failed the US intelligence failed in their prediction that the Russians were going to invade. Well, how do you know that that wasn't used as a deterrent? You know, because then if Russia would have invaded, you know, they would have looked pretty bad if, you know, that intelligence was correct. So really what we have going on is like this public relations game where the information, all the information that's being put out is there to deceive the other side or the populations therein. So it's very complicated to try to understand what's going on just on the basis of that. And it's incredibly complicated. So like, I mean, I guess the short of it is the best information that I've got to summarize is that there is a high likelihood that there's going to be some civil conflict. I mean, it's already kind of starting. I mean, the amount of weapons that are being sent there is staggering, okay? So, you know, there's going to be a war. Is it going to spill over into the surrounding regions? That's where things could potentially get sketchy. And so if somebody was to do something stupid, if China started to take the opportunity there to, you know, engage with Taiwan at that point, which I don't think they're ready yet in terms of staging that sort of offensive, because you got to put a whole bunch of guys in boats, you know, and it's a whole process. And as far as I know, there's no massive buildup on that coast yet. So, and I'm talking about the Southeast China Sea. Okay, so you know it's tough. It could get hot. What will happen is huge economic repercussions. Like you can see it every day that there's this threat of a conflict. The market dips like majorly, like today, you know, and then the next day, well, you know, the Russia doesn't invade, so the markets go back up again. I do think that once it finally happens, we will see a very significant market correction. And then, of course, there's going to be supply chain repercussions. You're going to have the gas prices go through the roof because, you know, Russia may not be supplying Europe with gas, which is going to increase the demand from the gas in the Middle East, which is going to increase our price of gas, which is going to increase the price of everything because everything runs on fuel, right? Like food, you know, all that stuff runs on fuel. So yeah, there's going to be some huge, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's going to affect those people who don't care about it right now at some point. But I can understand why they're not concerned with it because there's not really much you can do about it aside have a general preparedness, maybe really take a look at your finances and make sure that you're planning for a major market shock as a result of a major war between superpowers, like another Vietnam, potentially. The only thing that might prevent that is a lot of people think that if there was a war, that the Russians would be able to quickly take over the Ukraine, and that these weapons that they're being sent aren't significant enough to stage a defense. So, and I don't, proclaim to know much about that sort of military hardware, but based on the research I've done, it appears that the Ukraine would probably, and I keep saying the Ukraine, there's Ukrainians who are going to get mad saying Ukraine, but based on, the Russians are just far, far superior militarily. And it's likely that if they were to go in there, it would turn into like an Iraq situation where you had a refugee crisis, then you had this asymmetrical stuff going on, just kind of like the Iraqis did to the Americans. So it's hard to say, but who knows what's going to happen, but it looks like it is going to get hot. So I would just say that this stuff going on with the media, just take it as, I wouldn't necessarily believe it 100% at all. Well, we have our bias in the West because we're only seeing it from NATO's perspective. We're only seeing it from, we forget that since the fall of the Berlin Wall, NATO has increasingly moved eastwards, even though there was an agreement signed that said that we wouldn't do that. Now, maybe you guys can shed a little bit more light on that if you know more about the specifics, but that's essentially what has happened. So, like I say, I'm not making any sort of apologies for Russian leadership or anything like that. I know there's been a lot of atrocities committed, in the name of the Kremlin and all that throughout the years. So this is not like, yay, Russia's good, NATO bad by any stretch of the means. It's a national security issue for us, and we have to. But if you really want to understand what's truly going on, then it requires that you have a bit more of an open mind when you're going and researching it.
I think that's the biggest thing that I try to get people prepared for, is because one way or another, what happens there doesn't matter until it affects each one of us at our house. And so when you talk about things like the gas prices going through the roof, and how there's some market speculators saying that if it keeps up on its trend, we're going to see $7 per gallon gas prices in the US and, adjusted accordingly there in Canada. And I don't know how many people can handle that for how long. We start to break into that pyramid of possibilities where, kind of like the food pyramid, and you have all of your different groups there. Well, as soon as you have increasing fuel prices, increasing food price, healthcare at a low, you start to run the risk of our own civil disobedience here in the country, or at least unrest to some degree. In your guys' area, how are you seeing these prices affect your local environment? Is everybody talking about that? I know, Cliff, you said no one's talking about Ukraine, but are they all talking about gas and inflation?
A little bit. They definitely complain about the gas, and the people are going to try to find the best gas prices. When a few years back they were just going to wherever the nearest gas station was. I know that we're seeing it locally here in the grocery stores with certain items. It's not everything, but like, for example, if you want to buy ground beef, it's like almost 2 times as much as what I was just paying, not too long ago. And so I think people are being more selective with some of the meat purchases. But that said, it's not like it's not available. Like you can't get the ground beef, but you could get this other type of beef, or you can't get the chicken breast, but you can get the whole chicken. And so we've been seeing a little bit of that, but again, it's not with the same sense of urgency that we've seen in past, where everyone's kind of on the same page. Everyone has the same sense of worry, at least for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, what's that company that has the fake meat? What's the name of that one?
The Impossible, what's that?
Yeah,
meat.
It's their time to shine, baby.
Yeah,
No, it's we're having the same issues here. I don't know what gas is like there. I mean, $5 a gallon is pretty average where I'm at out here. But yeah, I mean, a piece of steak at Costco, a pretty large piece, 6 months ago, $50, now it's $100, where these are the things that we're going to be experiencing. As Nate pointed out, the Middle East is now going to have to start funneling more of their oil to parts that didn't rely on it. That's clearly going to trickle down to us. And so whether this happens tomorrow or 3 months or 6 months from now, we're all going to feel it. And Brad, to your point that you were making a second ago, and by the way, Nate, that was an amazing summary. I admittedly, I have not been following the situation there closely. I know you've had your ear to the ground pretty closely on that, but I think my bigger concern is just where this is all heading. Not to veer off course, but as far as the different things that are stacking up very quickly, how much longer is this sustainable? And that's what concerns me mostly.
I love how many that Nate has all these informants around the world that are providing information, like Lord Varys from Game of Thrones or something. Like the master the master of whisperers.
Yeah.
Is
the thing is, it's just our subscribers, you know. And
yeah,
what I've realized is that, and I know that Brad does this also, where people will send him information, and I've just realized it's such a huge resource that I haven't tapped enough, is our eyes and ears on the ground, because the media is such white noise nowadays. The only way to really get the truth is to see what people are seeing, and then we act as a purveyor of that information. So I'm just getting tons of emails, and admittedly there are some, like I said, that are a little on the fringe, people with that tunnel vision who are maybe have gone down a little too deep into the rabbit hole, but the majority of them are just people who are seeing stuff. You know, they're seeing increased military activity all around the world. And now, like I say, that could be a bit of confirmation bias, but, you know, maybe there's some truth to it. And, you know, it's very likely that if there was this escalation on the horizon, that the militaries of the world would be preparing for it, you know, and they wouldn't want to spook the population necessarily by saying, hey, we're preparing for a major war. And that's kind of what a video we're going to release this weekend is all about, the DEFCON system, and knowing how would you know what the true level of severity is at, because we know that just like in the Cold War, you know, there was plenty of times where we came very close to nuclear war that was declassified afterwards, you know, whether it was a computer glitch on behalf of the Americans or it was the Russians. You know, there was times when we were like 15 minutes away from full-blown nuclear annihilation and nobody knew about it. So, you know, it could happen that, you know, things could be escalating under the surface and we're just not being told how serious it actually is. And so that's always a concern. And I'm not trying to scare people. That's just a reality of being a prepping in an analyst mindset. You want to, you know, potentially think, okay, well, maybe this is what's going on, not running with it necessarily, but just considering all the possibilities.
Do you think that we're past that knee-jerk reaction conflict? You know, do you think that we're advanced technologically and as people across the world, where that one mistake made by Russia, made by Ukraine, made by NATO couldn't send us over the edge? Or are we still back where we were 200, 300 years ago, where some guy shoots the arrow and the next war starts?
Well, that's what concerns me is, yeah, if everything's right on the edge, right? One small mistake, and as Nate pointed out, I mean, I've read many stories of the similar where, you know, after declassified information has come out, that there's been several instances where it came that close. You know, people just didn't realize it. And I don't know if y'all have read the book Alas Babylon. It's a fictional book from the 1950s. It's a popular prepper book, but it's just the basic premise is, there's a conflict between America and Russia in a similar situation where a pilot makes a mistake, accidentally bombs a ship by mistake, and then it ends up, Russia fires off a nuclear missile, and then it just, everybody's popping off on each other. But and I often think about that story in the context of this is, it's that somebody makes a mistake somewhere. That's always my concern. It's human error is inevitable. And so that's what I would hate to see.
Before we started, Nate brought up how he said, Brad, you don't, wearing a collared shirt, you don't look like you're living out in the middle of the woods. But I'm reminded as I watch this fly, like right from the chicken coop, it's raining here and all the flies were like, okay, let's go inside Brad's house today, because I got the windows open and this flies in here trying to make its part of the show. So I'll start there before I get the overalls going.
I have my true Seattle hoodie looking like from the Chaz zone. So
yeah, that's right.
There you go.
You can't judge a book by its cover. I've been always curious on the mentality that people had during like the Cuban Missile Crisis or during the Cold War. Did the people back, because it was before my time, but did the people back then have that underlying sense like what we're doing now, or is it because we live in this digital we have this digital world, like, we're talking right now digitally, that we just have a little bit more access to the information. I haven't yet talked to like my mom or whatever on, hey, what was the sense of things at that time? Were you as worried as we might be right now with certain inflation things and prices and gas and all that?
I think now it's more of we have so much media now. So half of the war, it would be convincing people that this is the action we have to take, like that we need to take retaliatory action. So half the battle, even if there was a nuke fired on a country, say, like worst case scenario, the person in the country, let's say somebody nuked the United States city, you'd have to still convince the public that to justify the millions of lives that would be lost if we did a retaliatory strike. Now, what could possibly happen is you'll have this conflict within the president at the time, who may want to appear strong, may not want to appear weak. So it could be, there could be that aspect to it as well, where there's a political component to it all. But I do think that something you're saying is very important, because there's so much interconnectedness in the world with social media. It's very hard for them to vilify the Russians. Like, I think of like Survival Russia. Like, me and him are practically the same guy, just in a different country, So it's very difficult for them to put the population against each other. So that's why I think there would be one little safeguard there, where it won't be as easy to just start lobbing nukes back and forth. There'd have to be some pretty serious escalation and demonization of the other group. And I think we're still a ways away from that, because we're so interconnected. Russia has the internet. We have the internet. I can talk to Russians. I can go to Russia. I buy stuff from Russia. So I think we're still, things would have to, I do think they could escalate, but yeah, a lot of mistakes would have to be made. And I think it might come down to what are the war hawks doing in the background, because really that's where our fate will lie. I don't think the people want war. Maybe back in the day, in the fallout shelter days, the duck and cover days, people had to use their imagination about the other evil communists. They didn't personify them. They didn't have we didn't have any communication with them at that time. So it was very easy for us to just think, oh, the Russian boogeyman. Whereas now, we can't do that, which is good, because, we realize we're all just the same as in terms of our class, middle class, upper middle class, lower class. Doesn't matter what country you're from, most people can get along. And so that's something they would have to overcome. I think that's a hedge against all-out nuclear war, which is not to say it couldn't happen. I don't know, maybe you guys have a different view.
I just wonder what it takes to get there. What it takes to get the people rallied behind war. I know a lot of it is imagery. A lot of it is, fear of loss, hope for gain. That's going to drive a lot of people to get behind war. But then I also look at places around our world that have endured strife and that have been quick to go from, civil normalcy toward civil unrest. And we're only a couple of, I guess we could count it in months back from, the U.S. being divided by race, and large protests taking place, lots of unrest, the police pulling back. And so I wonder how quickly can people go from, like you said, because I'm just like you in that regard. I know people all across the world, no matter who, and I know people of all different religions, and that's why I never talk religion, because I know some great people who are of a religion who other people would balk at. And so how quickly can we as a country move and shift our behavior toward that war rhetoric? And I'm afraid it can happen pretty quick, but I can't in my head, wrap around what it would take to get there.
I don't feel that people are as patriotic as they used to be, where they might be a little bit more accepting of war. I think people are sick of it. And then you have a large portion of at least in the United States country, that they're not as patriotic as they were 10, 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 50 years ago. It'd be a little tougher, I think. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, Brad, you asked, what would it take? I mean, September 11th, we all remember how
yeah,
we just, everybody wanted to hammer somebody right after the event. And, we were all ready, to fight. And so I don't think it takes much to stir up a population, if something traumatic happens in front of them. So, but to your point, Cliff, I mean, the patriotism isn't there. I just, as we talked about at the beginning, I think we've kind of lost a taste for war in the last 20 years. We've just been pulled out of two major, conflicts that we've been engaged in for 20 years. So I just don't even know if people want it at this point.
I mean, I know I'm against war, because why send, if they want to go to war with someone, send them. That's kind of my opinion, not some kids that they don't know. But I guess we just have to wait and see what happens. And if that first event or series of events leads into more, and it kind of snowballs from there. What's your guys' take, if you didn't have anything else to say on Russia and Ukraine, what's your take on the bird flu? We're seeing a lot of it right now. It's being discussed, happening across the US. It's already hitting the supply chain, because they're having to kill 750,000 chickens. Surprisingly, I have a subset of my viewers who are coming on and saying the bird flu is not real and it never has been real. And I kind of wonder if they're joking, or if that's really the belief system that's going around. But these are individuals at farms that aren't, this isn't, Nancy Pelosi's not sitting at the Tyson farm writing the script. These are real people reporting their flocks dying and having to kill these chickens. Do you think that it's just a hyper vigilance, or just a cyclical, spell that we're under? Or do you think that we're going to see more biodiverse contagions happen across the world?
Well, I think because of the pandemic now, people are probably even more concerned about it. And that's probably drawing a bit more attention, because bird flu is always there. Is this, what strain is this? H7N9, or is it H5N1?
H5N6.
H5, okay, so it's a different one. And has any human caught it yet?
From everything that I've seen, a 50-year-old man in one Chinese place, but nobody in the US.
So it's not, there's no obviously there's no human to human transmission. So the
Right.
real concern is the price of chicken wings is going to go up even more. So which will be that's just one more, thing to add to the inflation basket, I guess.
I really wish that I had somewhere where I could go purchase survival goods right now, before inflation continues to take another hit against all of our pocketbooks. Do you know anywhere?
Well, I heard of a place called CanadianPreparedness.com, but the government has bought them out of MREs to supply to all their foot soldiers, unfortunately.
Oh, did you sell it to them?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah, I saw you posting on Instagram. So what was the story there?
Well, the story was, I guess I can disclose, I've disclosed it already on my channel. The Red Cross reached out to us to get some MREs, which, sure, we've helped government agencies before, and some people are surprised by that the government would have to actually go and buy military rations or style rations or emergency food in general from private companies. But that's really how bad it is, and people don't realize how unprepared not only the federal government, but provincial governments, probably state governments are similar over there in terms of their lack of preparedness planning, especially nowadays with the supply chain issues. During the wildfires and the floods here in BC, we had to ship a lot of stuff out there. So it's a real thing. And we didn't go through with it because there were some concerns about what it was going to be used for. In terms of the political aspects of that whole trucker convoy protest stuff, the Red Cross is an organization that is supposed to be apolitical. They're not supposed to supply food to military or the police. They couldn't give us a definitive answer as to what they were going to do with the stuff. And their demands for the timeline were so strict, like they wanted it, today by noon, which was very strange that they would need it that fast. And then I got a call from a person who works with them, and they basically explained, like, yeah, I've never seen anything like this before. And so that was kind of concerning for me. It, definitely was rather unsettling last night after I got off that phone call, because I figured that they were going to call me and be like, oh yeah, that's just this, and this, and this is going on or whatever. But it was the complete opposite. They were in almost panic mode about something that was supposed to be taking place. Now, apparently Ontario is stocking up on personal protective equipment again. So do they know? And Ontario is, of course, our main province. They're the biggest population. That's where the original SARS outbreak happened in 2002. So, the question is this just to do with this current pandemic, that there's this mad scramble to get all this stuff to that location? And then you got the convoy, and then you got the Ukrainian thing. So, it's hard to say what it is exactly, but there was some speculation on the part of this person I was talking to on the phone. They've worked with the Red Cross for a long time, and I'm not going to say what they do because I don't want to provide any identifiers, but they've never seen anything like this before in terms of the buildup of supplies and the trying to source supplies from every which way. So, it sounds pretty dramatic, and I guess it is. And I'm just here to share information with people. I'm not changing the story in any way, shape, or form. This is in fact, I had to kind of calm them down a bit and say, well, maybe it's just this, maybe it's just that. We do have these unprecedented protests right now taking place in Ottawa. Maybe that's the cause of all this. So, but it could be something else. Maybe it's the bird flu run amok. Maybe the bird flu is going to mix with I don't think this could happen, but with the coronavirus, or, who knows? Maybe there's another strain, or maybe we're entering an age of biological warfare. You could run on with all sorts of ideas as to what it could possibly be. But now that you have that information, what do you guys think that could possibly be?
I had a quick question. Do you feel that this is local to Canada, or do you feel that, like in the US, that they would also like go through a private business instead of I think I responded on Instagram, or versus going through the manufacturer itself of the MREs to buy them for wholesale versus going through a private business like yours then?
Yeah, so I seen you posted that on Instagram, and it's a good point. And why wouldn't you go to the wholesaler? The problem might be that the wholesalers are just sold out, that the dealers, because dealers have been scrambling to get inventory before the price skyrockets, that it could be that the wholesalers are not able to make the stuff fast enough, possibly. Or, I'm not sure how Red Cross is in terms of their budgeting of stuff. I've heard it's probably not that good. Now, there's a different Red Cross within each country, and each country has a certain budget that they provide to the Red Cross. I don't know much about the organization. I should probably just stop there. But I would not be surprised, and it could just be a Canadian thing where we're just not as prepared as the US. I'm sure you guys have a better infrastructure, being a more militant society. You probably got your emergency food supplies stocked up a lot better than we do, but it's hard to say. These are unprecedented times. These are uncharted waters, and it could just be that there's a lack of stuff, or that they're just trying to suck up as much as they can because they know something is coming that we don't. I don't know.
To answer Cliff on that, I had an advertiser a while back who created MREs, and they created them for the civilian market, but they also had government organizations that would buy just massive caseloads of them, and they would have to just fulfill hundreds of thousands of MREs for government organizations. So I think that it is a little bit of, they do reach out to private organizations to sell them and to create them, rather than it being like the military, which creates their MREs in-house.
And is it just MREs, or is it, because there's a lot of different survival food that, I know that I have in our storage and stuff. Is it just specific to MREs, or are we seeing also a huge increase in other things?
They like MREs because it's all contained. You don't need water. It's not like a freeze-dried meal where you need to have hot water. You basically have everything. You have your flameless cooker. You have all your utensils, all that stuff. They just throw a guy an MRE and there you go. I think that's why they like them. The only problem is they expire. And I think that they also run into those issues with expired equipment a lot. And when something expires, when you're with one of those organizations, you basically can't use it. You could probably send it to some other country, like they're sending the Ukrainians expired Javelin missile systems with expired battery packs. Expired. What does that really mean? We as preppers know that many things that have expiration dates have been shown to be good for use and consumption long after that. But something worth noting anyways. So I'm a little suspicious at what's going on. I think I'm going to chalk it up to they're trying to get the stuff in place for when they finally crack down on the protesters and they have to build detention camps or whatever, because they're not going to have enough, local jail facilities to, if they do put people in jail, or they might just, book them, give them a fine and say, get out of here type thing. But the police have been fairly meticulous in how they're doing it. So what they're doing is they're waiting till nighttime when a lot of people leave the protest, and then they're kind of taking the ground at night, so to minimize the altercations. That's how they took back the bridges. So,
I know that if I was just getting into preparedness right now, I'd be wondering what kind of course I could get into that would set me up from starting at ground zero and really being ready for 3 months. But all jokes aside, Chris, you just released a course that actually, if you're watching this today on Saturday, then on Friday, then you are going to have 1 day to get on Chris's course. And before the show here, we kind of talked about who his target audience was and what he was going for. And I said, really for what you're doing, you're only charging $10 an hour to deliver what could be life-saving information to people. Chris, could you tell us a little bit about where they could come to get more info about that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you introducing that. Essentially, if you go to cityprepping.com, there's a link on the homepage to the course that we just launched this week. And everything that we've been discussing is pretty much covered in the sense of teaching someone, if they're either beginning or a moderate prepper, how to go through the process from start to really build a foundation within 3 months of preparedness. And it's interesting talking about these different issues that we've been going through the last half hour. Admittedly, I've been so in deep in preparing this course over the last 3 months. I've been paying attention a little to the news here and there, some of the events, but with everything happening, whether we see an escalation or what, I think at this point, what I've tried to figure out is how do you move on an efficient timeline to prepare in the fastest way possible. And so really that's the approach I took with the course, is to teach someone how to build 3 days of preparedness, 3 weeks, and then eventually build up to a 3-month time frame, and everything that you need to consider on those time frames, different issues that will come up, and what you should prepare for. So I'll post a link in the description below for it if anybody's interested. But yeah, all that to say, go ahead.
I was just saying, what really, the first thing when we started talking about, I knew you were preparing the course ever since even our last show here on Think Preparedness. And we were talking a little bit about it, but you never dived into what it actually involved. And just today we learned about that it was starting out at 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, which is a good, timeline for people to be prepared for. And my first sort of consideration when you started telling me that was, okay, well, YouTube just has, a plethora of information. There's just information everywhere. But that's really what it comes down to, I think, is that, you can learn, you can watch a whole bunch of different information, how to fix your car, how to do these different things. But there's a reason why you go to mechanic school, because you start at ground zero and you learn all the way to the end. And sure, you can pick up on things, anybody could find out how to get 3 days worth of food. That's easy, but the dynamics behind it and the fundamentals that you can follow through, I just talked on a video, I think it was either today or yesterday, about saying that once you can survive 2 weeks, it's pretty easy to survive 2 months. And I think that might be something that you really picked up on with, the delivery of information.
Yeah, that was his exact premise, is that my thinking is that if you can be in a position to close your door for 3 months with your family and survive, I mean, really at that point, you're talking about scaling to go to a year, food and water, primarily, mostly food. I mean, water you can retrieve usually find in your area and then clean it up. But that was really the premise, is that if you can get to 3 months, because a lot of times in the prepping community, the gold standard is 1 year, being able to close off for 1 year. But when you tell somebody that up front, that's a very daunting, to say, hey, go out and prepare for a year. I mean, who would even know where to begin with that? So my thinking and what I approach the course is, how do you get to that goal, but do it in a very realistic way?
Well, and you mentioned that, the course price is $197, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was supposed to be $297, and Chris said, no, I know what people, everyone's having a hard time right now, and that's just too much. And when I even thought that, I was like, well, even $297, $300, what can I buy with $300? Sure, I could buy one thing in particular, like maybe a Berkey filter, maybe I could buy a UV light, maybe I could buy an aquaponics setup, but I can't buy the information that I have to take me from 0 to 10. So I think that that's very fair. And like I said, $10 an hour for info that could save somebody's life. I don't think there's anything, not worth that. So I applaud you for putting it out there.
I think it's also it's a good way for people who do watch our channels right now, that's a great way to introduce prepping to other people who have no conception of where to start. Maybe it might be less appealing to some of our hardcore viewers, but let's say you had somebody who was a little on the fence, or somebody asking you questions about, stuff that you probably think is common knowledge. And you could easily say, like Brad suggested, go out and do the research, and it might take you 3 or 4 times as long to get all that information boiled down. So what you're doing is you're saving time by going this route, I think. So yeah, I think it's a great reference tool just to send people there. So I'll definitely be referring people to it as long as I get my commission.
Heck yeah. We'll set you up on an affiliate account here pretty soon. We'll be doing that. No, I appreciate the plug. And, that was the thing. We had some people sign up, and they sent us an email today that they're part of a group that they don't consider themselves preppers, but these are individuals that are a lot of scientists, and they've been preparing for a pandemic for quite a long time. And so this information was incredibly valuable to them, because they've built what we call in our community a MAG. They built all these individuals with skill sets, and they started creating this documentation, but they were having a hard time piecing it all together. And so that was, it's interesting because we take this for granted because this is what we do all day, right? And I was creating the course, and I was like, oh, this seems so basic, but for somebody that's new, or even, I've had people that have messaged me that have been for 18 months and they're still trying to piece it together. So I don't know. All the issues that we're seeing, and what I personally believe we'll be seeing unfortunately, as things will continue, is all of us bring our own unique aspects to this community. I mean, there's things that each one of y'all do that I cannot. And for me, I just know that I love teaching, and I love to try to break it down to basic terms. So hopefully that's what I can convey.
I read something on Twitter the other night that was a good idea. And somebody said, that they always say practice makes perfect, but it doesn't. Because you can ingrain bad behavior into your practice, and then you're always going to be bad at that. Now, I'll give you my own personal example. I started shooting firearms very young, with my father and my brothers. They were all very advocate shooters, and take me down to, the range very young, and I started shooting, with my eye closed. And it was just a practice that I, kept doing over and over again. And it just made sense for me, where no one taught me the fundamentals of my eye dominance. And even though I was young, I was under 10, and I'm not going to really disclose for good reason, probably how young, I started shooting, but, no one taught me the fundamentals of, okay, we'll see which eye is dominant, and, really take your time there and wait for the trigger. It was that kind of thing. So, you can practice something over and over again, but if you're not taught from somebody who knows what they're doing, you might be ingraining bad behavior into your entire setup. So I think, I look to each one of you and to many people in our community. There's people who are going to comment right now who I know have more prepping experience than I do, and especially in certain areas, they're much more advanced than I am. And I look up to that and I say, okay, well, I respect that. So I think just coming from your outlet and your knowledge, and that it's not just, you didn't just say, okay, I'm creating this and I'm going to hand it off to somebody else to, just put this diagram together and, let you rip with it. No, you created this, and you really wanted to take people from 0 to 10. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I was going to say that, the house is only as strong as its foundation. And I think that it's important to, especially for new people, to get into preparedness, to have a super strong foundation. And even the word prepping, I think, scares off people. What you say that you're a prepper, oh, you're one of those people. So, which has probably come from the whole doomsday prepper thing, kind of gave us a bad name. But I think that, like, the more people that, even if they don't want to call it prepping, the more people that are into prepping and through like the course that you're offering, the better society the world's going to be. We need more people that are thinking in these terms to be left, so there's less people to be a burden on the overall grid when stuff goes down. But I think like was Brad was mentioning, when you go to specialized schools, they're going to the fundamentals, they're going to their base layer, because whether it be music school or it be automotive skill or computer science or whatever it is, like if you don't have that foundation, it doesn't matter how extravagant the house is on top, it's going to be a house of cards. So I think it's a great service that you're providing to people, and especially to the new people that we need to reach, because I think like probably that Brad and Nate would be more of like the 300 400 graduate level for preparedness, but we need to get more of those people that don't even consider themselves preppers at this point.
I don't think so. Not there yet. It's still in high school, man.
GED.
We talked about investing, and before the show started, and we each talked about different layers of investment. And I think for me, investment, that really means when you have all of your preparedness done, you can start investing into something without really damaging your ability to become more prepared. Now, if it's a hobby, it's one thing, but actually going out and investing into something, takes information, and it takes a little bit of risk. So we were talking about gold and silver. I know that Cliff, you're a big silver guy. Do you? Yeah, do you? I know you're not saying.
I want to say too big, but I with everything with cryptocurrency and with precious metals, I do a little bit each time, and I don't follow the market whatsoever. I don't watch to see if it's going up or down. But I have I get it in the mail that comes on a regular basis, a little each there, and it's amazing when you do that after a couple of years. Just like now, I'm like, oh, I got to get a different storage setup for my silver stack.
You're Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah. I used to love that show. But but and gold too. But gold's it takes longer to get that amount of quantity.
Well, Nate was saying before we got started here that he likes gold because it's something that has been so strong throughout history. And I'm even watching this, reading this article right now. The gold futures jumped. Just on Thursday, they touched $1,900 per ounce because of tensions like we talked about tonight: bird flu, Russia and Ukraine, inflation, the U.S. stock market. All those things that are happening. What's your take on investing? I know that we each say, well, make sure that you get your pantry stocked up. Do you think that there is room? Here's my opinion first. I think that somebody should start in silver before they move to gold, but I think you could even start in crypto before you move to silver. But crypto has more risk than silver, in my opinion. So if you're just looking to placehold money at the chance of investment, or put it somewhere that I know this is steady, so if everything else goes to junk, I know I'll have this. I would say start with silver. What's your take on it?
I could go first.
By the way, Nate, you missed this, but we were just talking about investments, precious metals, crypto, et cetera. So welcome back.
Don't know anything about that.
Go
ahead,
I
mean, I don't give financial advice. Let me get the disclaimer. But I try to do I've always been inspired by the Dave Ramsey approach for when you're building up that $1,000 cash before you do anything else. And I, for the past few years, I've been trying to keep that kind of strategy, but with cash. With like fiat currency, with precious metals, and then with cryptocurrency, and doing those all in parallel. And I don't pay attention to the prices. That, I mean, if it's going up or down, because I'm in it for the long haul. But that's what
smart.
I do. But I do think that I think I've been investing more in my pantry, that's for sure, than anything else. And I've been working on my pantry organization because it was a little bit of a mess for a while. But I think I got a good system now. I'm working on a video. So.
Nice. Do you have any, do you guys invest at all in the stock market?
Just for retirement. I set that up years ago through a broker
retirement
locally.
Stuff,
for retirement but I don't touch it by myself.
Just like in the indexes.
Roth IRAs, it's for tax purposes, but it's, you just set it up to contribute a certain amount each year.
See, I don't invest in any of that. I chose a different route, and I chose physical investment instead. So my goal is to be able to be at a position where I can make as little money as possible, as feasibly possible, and still live comfortably. So, making sure that everything I have is paid off, making sure that I can produce some of my own food to offset rising food costs, make sure we have some of our own animals. And I guess I chose that way mostly because either it's out of spite, because I see the stock market as a rich guy's game. And I know it's not. I know anybody can get in. And I know it's smart to get in for retirement. But I think spitefully, I'm like, I know this is rigged against me being able to put in this little amount against this huge sum. And so I just chose not to do it, and I chose physical. And I'm still, even today, looking for that next physical advancement. Okay, what can I get that sets me up, better for the future?
I think everybody's looking for that right now, but there's no safe shelter for investors. And whether it's real estate, we were talking about this before we started the call. I mean, I'm looking at that right now, but I'm paranoid, like most of us, are we in another bubble? Because in my area, I've looked at property 6 months ago and I looked at today and I started shopping it again today. It's gone up 50% for a piece of raw land with nothing on it. And I'm like, what happened? What changed? Yeah,
That's
it's exactly. And of course I talked to my realtor. He's a good guy, but I mean, they do what they do, right? It's like, you better get on, while you still can. And I'm like, all right. When I hear that talk, that's when I'm always like, let me set my watch to check, in a couple of months, because that feels like a bubble.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to diversify. Like I wouldn't, like you said, the stock market, it's not really a rich man's game anymore, because there's apps that you can use to buy partial shares of things. And lots of these companies have gotten wise and they're doing stock splits. So you had Tesla, genius move to split their stock when they did. I'm sure Amazon's going to be next. I would say don't shy away from it too much, because there are ways that you can, I don't want to say anybody can make money in the stock market if you stick with the blue chip stuff. Like really, it's not, and that's why people buy the indexes, but I would definitely wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket. I mean, diversify crypto, stocks, precious metals. First and foremost, like if I was to erect a hierarchy for preppers, it would start with physical stuff, obviously. Food, like food which is made to last a long time is a what's the word I'm looking for? It's an inflationary asset. Like it's going to go up in price, because we know that, like chicken, for instance, I go and I freeze dry chicken today, that chicken is going to be worth 3 or 4 times as much probably in 10 years. So get your food first. Livestock, that's something which is regenerative. So you're talking about, that in itself is a commodity that's inflationary. It's not deflationary. Then you get into land, then you get into hardware, like stuff. Like right now, stuff is like to go and buy, like usually in the past, when the market's good, you go and you buy stuff, the price goes down basically right after you buy it. Doesn't really matter what it is. But even technology nowadays, even graphics cards are going up in price. So like you go buy yourself a Harvest Right freeze dryer or a dehydrator or something to that effect, that's going to hold its value because of the situation we're in for a long, long time, much longer than it would have in the past. So yeah, I always get these comments if I ever talk about gold, oh, you can't eat gold. And to me, that's the sign of somebody who is just starting into this preparedness thing. Eventually you'll get to the point where you have your year's worth of food stored. You'll have, your acre of land or your 10 acres or whatever, and you'll still have this excess energy that you got to store in something. I call it energy. Money, that to me is just energy. So, you got to put somewhere. And I think that's when you start getting into the precious metals, and then maybe get into a little bit of the crypto, get into the markets. What else did I miss? I think that would be my hierarchy anyways.
And invest in MREs. That's probably good.
Well, actually, invest in freeze dried, because people don't know about freeze dried yet for some reason. It's really far superior. There are some MREs that have freeze dried components, but because not the whole thing is freeze dried, they have to put a reduced expiration date on it when really it'll last a lot longer. So invest in
Yes.
freeze dried. It's a future of food.
It's amazing because we do this all day long. We just assume everybody knows this stuff. And I had a friend reach out to me recently. I mentioned him in the past, and he is a missionary down in not Puerto Rico, but totally blanking because I said it, but he's down in what's the island that had the earthquake about 5 to 6 years ago? Haiti. Yeah, it came to me now. And he was like, well, they're having a lot of civil unrest, and he's scrambling to build up his food supply and to get ahead of it. And he's like, what foods do you recommend? He watched some of my videos, and I was like, hey, check out freeze dried. And he's like, oh, never heard of that. Really? He's like, what do you recommend? I was like, in my mind, it's just you think because you hear this, you assume everyone knows, but yeah, if you freeze dry something now for 25 years, I mean, a piece of meat, yeah, you're going to get your return on that quickly.
And it tastes good.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing is, they just came out within the last 48 hours, and a poll showed that 61% of Americans right now are living paycheck to paycheck. So I think cost barriers are a big thing for a lot of people, and everybody's really thinking about, is this worth my return on my investment? And that's what it is. To me, I look at that micro return on investment. And that's why, I know you guys said you should still look into the market for these things, but what kind of return am I certainly going to get? And I think that,
could get a good return.
if more than
you invest in the right stocks, you'll get a good return. That's why I feel like I sometimes and I'm not saying you personally, but just in general, I feel remiss if I don't talk about the market, because I feel that you might even be depriving people of something where they can actually, it's just like crypto, like if I feel that people could make some money at crypto, even though, trust me, me and Chris argue about crypto all the time. I'm more of a gold guy, but if I knew that somebody could make money there, and you can make money in the market, you just got to not be dumb about it. And there's plenty of channels out there to walk you through that. I mean, don't go investing all your money in SPACs and speculative stocks, but most good businesses, if you know if you can morally align yourself, bring yourself to investing in those companies, it will make you money.
So you bring up a good point, Nate. I mean, I'm getting people that are messaging me, asking me, hey, do you think this is all about to crash, the economy? And by you saying that, I'm not saying you're saying, hey, it's always going to be good, but it's fascinating you do reveal that and share that, because, I'm looking, I'm bullish on a lot of things, but I'm getting nervous right now. I'm like, man, this feels like we're moving in the bubble.
On the button. You have to have your finger on the button. You have to be ready. The whole thing could go under, but it's kind of it's like a game of chicken. I mean, you got to be in it to win it. And you have to be willing to take a bit of risk, obviously. Now, just like the stock market always tends to go up, there's going to be those periods where there's going to be crashes. Now, if we don't have the mother of all World War III crashes, there's a good chance there'll be a correction and it will go back up again. Now, you could say, so I guess it's just, if you know of a company that you believe is going to be very successful in the future, barring everything goes well, why wouldn't you invest if you had a little bit of extra money in that company? I mean, it just makes perfect sense. But I definitely wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket. I mean, like I said, prepping pyramid is like most of my money is going to be in land pretty soon. So,
Yeah, even as you were just saying that, I was thinking, okay, well, let's say I had $1,000 that I saved up to invest, or the average viewer saved up to invest. Would it be better I think maybe we should even cover at some point in time a basis to make sure that all of these bases are covered first. Make sure that you have your 72 hours, your 3 days, like Chris's course, then your 3 weeks, then your 3 months, then make sure you have your self-defense tools, make sure you have all these things. And once these bases are covered, then, think about what's happening next. Should you invest in land? If you have a little bit of land, should you invest in livestock? Where does livestock and land play into putting that $1,000 towards, towards a stock that has maybe more risk? I mean, I can't say more risk because that land could change its value at any point in time, but then at least you have that real physical asset that, hey, if you've got to go pop a tent there, that's what you can do.
Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, it's a guarantee that that livestock is always going to have value. It's not a guarantee that the stock is always going to have value, but there's more potential upside with the stock, I guess you could say. However, in today's market, there's probably a lot of upside with the livestock as well, the way the prices are going up. So there's a lot of things to balance, I guess, but
Yeah.
and that's why you never want to put, you know, it sounds like a cliche, but diversify. So have a little bit in everything.
Do you think that we're reaching that point now where, because I've been seeing it, I've been saying it and then I've been seeing it, but I want to know your guys' point of view. Do you think we're reaching that point where those common items are becoming more luxurious to the common man, you know, like steak, like, you know, chicken supplies? And do you think that that market will continue to be capitalized on by the people who are financially invested into the market? Because look at Walmart. Walmart simultaneously told us that they had to raise prices, and they posted record net profits and dividends. Those two things are at a clash with each other. You can't need to raise prices and post record net profits. I mean, that doesn't make any sense side by side. So do you think that this problem we're seeing in supply and everything else, you know, the cost of goods, the cost of meat, do you think that it will just keep purposefully being pushed higher and higher and never return?
I don't know. My biggest fear is what you just pointed out is that if these things, you know, Chipotle, I forget how many companies have posted all these record profits. They're raising the price of their products. They're not paying their employees very rarely anymore. We're seeing, actually, no joke, and I know this is anecdotal, but our local Starbucks down the street, they're no longer open. There's one, of course, like every Starbucks has about 5 within a block, but we're starting to see that they're shutting down for very small windows of time. And we're seeing like local McDonald's, other stores that are posting these, you know, we're now hiring at this price point because no one's willing to work there anymore. And some of these places are shutting down, is the point I'm trying to make. So my bigger concern is, where does this all go if these corporations continue? And I'm not anti-corporate, but I think at the end of the day, if you don't take care of your people, you continue to jack the prices. And, you know, this information is public. They're posting these record profits. These things don't add up. And it's, again, my biggest concern is, what does this mean to the common person? And what will be the ultimate reaction? And how will people react? At what point do people get tired of this? And again, I'm a capitalist through and through, but, you know, when I employ people, I take care of them, I pay them. And I don't, you know, I could pad my pockets more, but I know at the end of the day that it's the right thing to do to take care of people. So I think that's my bigger concern.
Hello.
Sorry for the camera.
We have a fifth guest tonight.
It's her. She's wants me to put it, but that's okay. I was going to say, I haven't seen anything as far as luxury items, like where people are not eating steak as much as they used to, or salmon or anything like that. But yeah, it's definitely.
Well, you're in Seattle, though, right?
Yeah, maybe that's it. and I kind of operate within the corporate realm because I work in high tech and stuff, and so I kind of see that, and it is real frustrating when you see like all the profits, and then you see raising prices. It's like it's almost comical that you could just get away with that now. I guess it's no big deal, but and with the Starbucks things, I've been noticing that a lot locally as well. But I wasn't sure if that was because they couldn't find the people to work there, or if if it was like, you know, they went through Omicron or something, and no one was available to work because of for health reasons or stuff. But most likely it's because a lot of people
that flies right on your.
It's been loving me this whole time.
You have the fly of my daughter. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we need something, Chris.
I'm constantly at war with myself in my own mind, I guess, because like I'm a capitalist as well, and I know that you can't get ahead without working on the backs of other people. So one person can't rise up without other people staying the same or making less money. And the marketplace will allow you to make more money if you pay people less money. That's the whole offshore deal. You know, that's the whole thing we did there. And I understand that, and I get it. I think that that's okay. I'm not saying we should abolish that or change it in any way, but I don't know if there's any reparation there. Is there any coming to terms with the decrease in the middle, the middle class? Or is it just, this is the cycle and it's going to keep going until it ends when you have the ultra wealthy and everybody else is, meager or at best somewhere around there?
I think we've already arrived there pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad to see it. 61% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. That sucks. You can't say it any other way. That really sucks. And I don't think they're being false or facetious in the way that they describe that. Living paycheck to paycheck, because let's face it, and Kelly and I just talked on the way home, we have released bad financial decisions that we have made in the past, and we have sold those things, and we've said, okay, well, let's get rid of this, and we've made a profit on them. But we released them because I couldn't see that the way the economy was going to keep being indebted in a certain amount to any one thing in particular or another. And I feel bad for people who are in a 30-year mortgage or in a couple of mortgages, and they have so much uncertainty ahead. There really is. And so I don't know how that plays out in mental health. And I know, Nate, you have a background in mental health. If you had to take everything that you've known and seen, would you say that the public and the people right now are really at a low, or do you think that they can handle even more if we throw it at them?
Well, I just think that there's so much, the price of fixed expenses is going up, but the price of virtual reality and video games is going down, and Netflix is going down. So, the distractions are there to kind of kill the pain, almost as like a painkiller. So people would probably be more up in arms if they didn't have a high-speed internet connection. But because we have these things to kind of carry us through, and because you have that technological deflation, so even though you're saying people are living like 61%, like everyone seems to be, at least, I mean, Canada's maybe a bit more well-to-do than some nations, but I still see people driving in decent cars who are supposedly broke, and they're all wearing new clothes. So like this technology is still raising all ships. But yeah, I mean, the price of food is through the roof, and everybody keeps going in. There's more and more household debt every year. So yeah, one of these days people are going to wake up and realize that, shit, I can't eat today, but I have like this $1,000 cell phone in my pocket somehow.
Yeah.
What did the percentages used to be like 20 to 40 years ago with regard to paycheck to paycheck? Like we're talking 60 something percent now. Like what was it in 1980? I'm not sure. I have to look it up probably. But
yeah, I'd like to know that as well. And I'd also, like to point out that my idea, at least my interpretation of paycheck to paycheck, is really anyone who's under, if you make under $1 million a year, your expenses could be at the point where if you lose making that $1 million a year and your expenses are right up there, you're living paycheck to paycheck because you lose that paycheck and your whole life is, in the dumps. So I think that that's just really a more reflection on people's ability to endure life changes, and how they will affect them financially.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, because it's all relative, right? Like if you're saying if you have $1 million budget a year, that's a pretty high standard of living, even though you're living paycheck to paycheck. So
yeah.
I think too, that not only the issues of how much you're making, but the security nets that used to be there are no longer present. So, for example, the cost of health insurance, it just keeps climbing. And, our deductibles, my God, if we have something, our insurance is really, our health insurance is more of a catastrophe insurance. It covers, up to a certain point, so it doesn't wipe us out. I've got to pay up to that point. But the amount that we're paying every month is, what I paid my first mortgage just 10 years ago. And, it's not the greatest of insurance. It just basically keeps us from going bankrupt. But all that to say, systems like that, I mean, I know about 8 years ago, 50% of all bankruptcies in America were due to health-related issues. And that, to me, it's these type of systems that are not there to protect people. And I'm by no means advocating that it's the government's responsibility to take care of people, but we've clearly moved into a very corporate type of America where it's the bottom line is making sure that somebody makes money and it comes at the expense of someone else. And while we live in the wealthiest nation at the same time, it's these very odd conflicting principles. But, the point I'm trying to make is that it's a lot of people are right on edge. And one little thing could tip them over.
Yeah, I guess
you're right. It's going to be, it has to, and that's why they're so adamant about universal basic income, because the billionaires, they see the writing on the wall. I mean, they know that with automation, their wealth is going to get bigger and bigger, and everybody else's wealth is going to get smaller and smaller. And ultimately, people are going to be at the gates with pitchforks. So how can we, pass some of this? How can we make that not happen? Because, they want to maintain their privilege as we go into the dystopian future. So how do they do that? Well, they give us just enough to survive. And that's probably what's going to happen and it almost seems like these stimulus checks, whether it was planned that way, I don't think it was, but it was almost like that was the first leg of that. Like that was a test run almost to see how the market would respond to stimulus checks, because it's probably going to be that, and these corporations are going to pay higher taxes. And, the billionaires are going to still be able to keep all their wealth and their privilege. But, the rest of us, I guess, supposedly we're going to have, free time to do stuff, to do artistic endeavors and whatnot. But I guess we'll see. I mean, there is an argument for it going both ways. A lot of people, like the Luddites in the 19th century, thought that the factories were going to kill all jobs. And obviously that didn't happen. So, maybe we'll all just be coding someday, or I mean, you guys already are, but maybe I'll be coding someday. Who knows?
I just spoke with a automation expert less than 48 hours ago, and I met him through some programming channels and information gathering that I've done before on different programming projects that I've worked on. And we talked about these big corporations that are pushing for automation. And I started to bring up my qualms with that. And I said, okay, well, what about when these things happen? And he said, it's about the 90%. The 90% of what humans do on a job is boring. And he said that's stocking shelves, or putting in data, or flipping a burger, or bagging something. All those things are very boring, and they only need a person there for that 10% of the time. So you take 100 people, if they can automate 90% of what they do, and you only need 10% of the workforce, look at the profits that can be made there. And I threw out some information like, okay, well, what about a security job, or somebody who has real hands-on physical work? It takes an eye. And he said that's, you don't even have to look at it like that. 90% of the security job's time is sitting around watching a camera, driving the car around, doing whatever, that they can have a robot or security cameras and automation, an AI going over the data. And then they call out the 10 guards that are remaining out of the 100 workforce to go, attach to a problem. And that really hit me, that I was like, okay, well, that makes total sense. If the drive is to automate all of the boring time, that really puts everybody's job at risk.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely do that in in the projects that I work on in like software engineering. Like we're automating the boring stuff, and I've been concerned about automation, like getting rid of my job for over 20 years now, and it's been an ongoing fear, and it's definitely something that's concerning. I'm not really supportive of it. A lot of the, like, going to the grocery stores and using the self checkout. I don't do that. I like the people interaction, and it's sad to see when there's a lot of talk about the minimum wage and everything, and then you see like all these kiosks and stuff forming at McDonald's and other food places, and the automation thing is definitely scary. And the robot dogs that you see, I used to see little videos of those, and I thought they were fake, and now I'm seeing them. Like, you can really see those kind of things. So it's definitely gonna be a scary world if 90% of the day is done by a machine. I mean, why?
Nate always tells us about the meta, and I think he has a much better beat on the meta than we do, and that dystopian future. And I guess the way you just described that, in my own personal feelings, like I would much rather not see another person at a grocery store, or anywhere I go. If I can order on my phone and pick it up at a curb, or better yet, have it delivered, I'm even better. So I wonder if it's a mass conditioning of that sort of programming to try to get people, maybe anti-socialized, or maybe excuse me, maybe there's just that push that if you can get people to accept that, then you don't need that much personal interaction, and maybe it might be something larger, and that's why they want us all to wear goggles all day long and never have to leave the house.
I know a lot of kids, like, I mean, my son and his friends, like when they're away from their computer, their whole virtual world where they don't know what to do like in normal life oftentimes. And like, that's like back in the day, I used to be scared of spankings and stuff, but now my kids are scared of taking away, Fortnite or something like that. That's like the
Yeah.
ultimate punishment.
Oh,
So,
that's crack.
and like
Chris.
I could even manipulate them with like, hey, I need this chore done. I'll give you $20 for it. And he was like, well, I'll do it for $10 of V-Bucks, which is virtual money for some virtual clothes for some character on a video game. It's so many the youth and the kids are so like the way that they think about things. There's two different worlds that they're living in. There's the online world, like with us as YouTubers and the Twitter and all these things and video games, and then like the real world that they're antisocial. They don't know how to talk to a cashier. They don't know how to order McDonald's. They'd rather just press a button and be antisocial. So I definitely like the human interaction, and I really cherish that. But I know other people that don't like that. During Christmas shopping, I always shop online though, because I don't want to go to the mall. But
I think we're definitely being groomed for that to become more antisocial and isolated, it seems. And
But is it intentional?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, and that's the argument, right? You could say that there's some, panel of old men somewhere who are saying, "Oh yeah, we need everybody, in the Matrix." But one thing that scares me with the whole thing, and I'm not a technophobe, my kids have the virtual reality stuff, and I don't want it to be a shocker to them to step out into the world in 20 years and be like, holy shit, I want them to be able to have a sense of what it is, but also remember that, and a great example is farming. Like, you can go up to any modern farmer up here, and all of the farming is based on technology. So they couldn't grow a vegetable probably if their life depended on it, because it's all about, mass big agriculture. So what happens when, nature throws us a curveball and we go back to the dark ages or whatever? Who's going to have all these skills if everything becomes automated and we keep leveling up in the technological sophistication? Then all of the original things that kept us alive are lost. And that's why you have this nostalgic draw to bushcraft channels, people just sitting by a fire, because I think that's part of us longs for that. And but we also, I think, intuitively realize that if we lose that entirely, there's a big risk there of, if we go too far into this technological thing and we forget all of the foundational skills that allowed, the Aboriginal people to survive and the Pilgrims to survive, if you want to take it up a level. If you forget that, then you run the risk of, if shit does hit the fan, we're going to be really screwed. So yeah, the further we go in, I kind of compare it to, I use the metaphor of, like, let's just say we're all on this island, okay? And that's where we were all born. Like, that's where a primordial man was birthed, from this island.
Yeah.
And technology is like this vessel that takes us further and further from the island. And so, the further you get from it, the more out of touch you get with those original skills. And yes, it's going to take us far. It's going to take us places where we've never been able to go and wouldn't be able to go without it. But you run the risk of, what happens if this boat sinks? Then we're pretty much screwed, right? So that's my big concern with automation. I'm not a technophobe, but I also see that you have to maintain those original self-reliance skills. And I think that's why a lot of people nowadays are so drawn to the off-grid lifestyle, because I believe that somewhere as human beings, we understand this. We understand that if things were to go bad, this technology is, it's not, we can kind of take it for granted. We presume that it's just always going to be there, but it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not God-given. It's not, it's not natural, it's artificial. So it can easily be taken away. And even if we can't verbalize that, I believe that's what's drawing people to that lifestyle. Because why else would you want to go and sleep in the woods and breathe fire smoke all night? Like, why? Why would you want to do that? You know, so there must be something there. What do you guys think about that? Sorry to go off on you like that.
I like it.
I like it. It's great.
Yeah.
Cliff, or Chris, what do you think? Do you think we're kind of moving towards that push for technology? I tend to agree with Nate there that, that's ingrained in our DNA, that want for that fire. We know that it means life, and we know that you want to, I don't want to say hoard,
Right.
but you want to put food away because that means
Sure.
life.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess I got a visitor too. So hold on one second. So
Okay.
Evelyn, I'll be done in 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, you guys brought your kids. All I brought was my fly to work today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, y'all each had a guess, so I figured I got to get mine. So
I'll go get
I'll
one
let
of my
y'all-
dogs.
Huh? See, I'm doing.
Oh, there we go.
Right now, so
Hello, Evelyn.
yourself.
It's like, Dad, are you done yet? Come on.
Yeah.
Don't worry. All
I'll
the
be done in
viewers are
5
like,
minutes,
are you
okay?
guys done yet?
Huh.
Can you make me a necklace that has little points on it?
Yeah, sure. I'll make you a necklace. I'll be in just a minute.
Nice.
I'll
So
take
That's
one
his
too.
forte.
Yeah, that's my necklace. I have to wear the tiara while I'm making a necklace.
Okay.
No, to answer your question, and I know we got to probably wrap this up. It's getting late here, but I don't know. I've been working on this course for the last 3 months, and I was locked into this office. I had to work around the clock to get it done. Had to take time over the holidays. It's just a lot of stuff that I've sacrificed. All that to say, I have been jonesing to get the heck out of here. I'm like, I just can't do a structure much longer. I don't know if it's because I grew up out in the woods and I miss that time, but the point I'm trying to make is, while I enjoy the privileges of technology and what it leverages for me, I mean, internally, I miss going out into the outdoors. I miss that connection. And I mean, I don't have to state the obvious here that there's, clearly advantages of being out in the sun and doing these things. But the last few years has been, it's been tough on a lot of people being confined indoors and the other issues that have come with that. So I don't know. To answer your question, Brad, what do I think? I mean, yeah, for me, there's definitely a pull to get back. And now that I'm done with this course, my plan is the next few months to just spend as much time outdoors. I'll finish by saying this. I had Survival Lily. She did a video for my channel several weeks ago. And people were like, holy cow, that's the first time we've seen anybody on your channel outside your office. I was like, yeah, because this studio is so easy. I can come in, click a button, record and be done, and so that's for me. I just want to get the heck out and start spending more time outdoors and filming. So it's been difficult being confined. I'll say that much.
Well, we hope everybody that when you're watching this, nothing crazy has happened between Russia and Ukraine. We hope the market is still there and you can look to Nate for all of your non-official stock tips, but it's not financial advice. That, you'll look to Canadian Preparedness for your .com, of course, for all of your MREs and get them before the Red Cross can. And that we'll be a little bit more prepared for what comes at us tomorrow. I think for each one of us, you hear it's like the trolls' first thing to say is, doomsdayer. And that's like the only go-to. But each one of us, we're here about the car accident, the fire in a house, learning how to go fishing and clean your own fish and do those things. And that's what's really important to us. But yet we keep we keep a close eye on the events of the world, because those are the ones that will affect us, and not just as an individual, but as an entire society. So I appreciate everyone who's watching this and all the comments you guys have. If we don't answer every single comment, trust me that we're all taking the time to read through them. And, if you feel like you have left a comment that was really important and we didn't get to it on a last one, maybe it's something we should talk about in the future, please leave it again and let us see it. And, we'll try to get to it. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to wrap with?
We could
That was
probably
great.
go on for many hours, but we'll call her quits.
I want to see I want to see the necklace that Chris makes. So
Yeah,
hopefully we get an
I'll
update on
text you
that.
tonight.
Yeah,
I'll text you that in a picture of some fruit and some
Yeah,
vegetables that
thank
you
you.
like. So
I'm going to go spend a little more time with my fly. So I hope you guys have a good night tonight.
They could make a survival necklace video or something like that.
Yeah.
Flint and
I'll
steel.
put that on my agenda.
Flint and steel
What-
paracord.
I don't
there
think
you go.
we'd be doing the audience justice if we didn't learn what the necklace was going to be made of or the color motif that it was going to employ.
I'll post that on my Instagram for
You
sure.
should
when
you
it
should
comes
sell it on
together.
CanadianPreparedness.com. A couple of 3D prepping
Survive.
custom necklaces.
Yeah, survival
to work.
necklace.
I'll pay her a fair wage, I promise.
I'm sure you will.
The Red Cross will pick them all up.
Well, guys, we appreciate everyone who's taking the time out of their day to watch with us here, from each one of us, our family members, to you and everybody in your family. Please stay safe and keep watch.